So I've always been sort of course, when I grew up, I was Indian. When I went there, actually I became completely American. I was not Indian at all. When I returned back in '85, I was sort of American, sort of trying to become Indian. Abhi to ho gaya, back to the pavilion, which is the right place to be. But I always have, America has a very strong place in my heart, because I still have a lot of friends there and I enjoyed it and I learned a lot. I was delighted to discover, I didn't know that you guys have your own little private entrance on Fort Bombay. It is very high value, So it's a great place. So I'm delighted to be here. Thank you very much. Now, the subject, currency volatility and, how should we live with it and what should we do? See, the reality is, people say, well, it's too volatile, RBI should do something, government should do something. I was traveling in Turkey the other day and there the exporters were saying government should do something. I think what we have to realize, as I think Mr. Bilal said, the world is globalized. Volatility is a fact of life. To me, I would go one step further. I would say volatility is a sign of life. If you look at your heartbeat and if there's no volatility, you're dead. So I think we need to recognize that volatility is there in everything. We are all creatures of God. It is a sign of life. So it's not something to hide from, be frightened of or whatever. You have to learn how to manage it to your own requirements. And it could be different. What you should do would be different from what you should do. And you really need to learn what are your needs and how will you manage them in the market. Now, the good news, and this is, on the way here, I will be talking to a journalist. And this is a surprising thing. India is now doing very well in the world. But there are a few areas where we are uniquely number one. Everyone knows we are number one in IT. But I think you will be surprised to hear, and there's no evidence of it except anecdotal evidence. I really believe that Indian companies are number one in the world when it comes to risk management, for FX risk management. And frankly, I must claim sort of part of that success. Because one of the reasons that Indian companies are so skilled is because my father, in the early 70s or mid 70s, so that's 35 years ago, started an information service, chota, for his friends. So, and then I came back from the US, I picked up the business and we started building it. So for 35 years or 25 years, there have been people trying to teach people about dekho, ye hota hai, aisa karo, waisa karo. Right or wrong is not the point, but the fact is people were thinking about it. Over the years, companies have come to compete with us. So now, I think there's no doubt in my mind, I don't have pakka evidence, but a mid-sized company in India, let us say a company of 250 crores, would be much more skilled at risk management than a similar company, let's say in the US, company with $50 million of exports, right? Or even in Germany. Germany has huge exports. They are currently lucky because they sell mostly into Europe and they have the same currency. As I said, I was in Turkey. They don't know anything. Maybe there are probably 10 companies or 15 companies who actually hedge actively. In India, there are thousands. We ran a survey this year, in May this year, of risk management practices. This is the third year we ran it. The first year, there were only teeth, we got 48 or 50 companies to participate. The second day, again, 55 companies. This year, we got 100 companies. So I'm saying we are really quite evolved in this. And everyone, but while we are evolved, let me put it another way, we are evolved in terms of our awareness. But it's not an easy area. It's very complicated. And, dealing with markets is a trick. And so we have a long way to go. Everyone has a long way to go. But, really, I didn't so much want to talk about currency volatility and what can you do, because really I've said all you can do. Really, I think, we all know, at all points in time, everything is changing, right? The world is always going through change, and people always say, oh God, things are changing so dramatically. But I think you could say that at any point in history. The Chinese used to say, may you live in interesting times. Sure, but they're always interesting times. But it does appear, that this crisis in the West, in 2008, and I remember Rakesh Mohan, who used to be Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank, he said, this is not a global crisis. I call it the North Atlantic crisis. Because in fact, the crisis was mostly in the US and the UK. But now what has happened is this crisis has really weakened, if you will, both the US and the EU, as we are seeing today. Which to my mind has really set the stage for a new world order. I mean, everyone has been saying for a long time, we look at China, look at India, the pendulum of economic growth has been moving east for a long time. But I feel this was sort of a nodal point in the change. I mean, those countries are really, really in trouble, And, okay, so suddenly, I would say 3-4 years ago, I don't know how long ago, suddenly instead of G7, they did G20, हाँ सबसे बात करेंगे. But you saw that meeting in Seoul, they didn't achieve anything, right? Then there was a NATO meeting, they didn't achieve anything, right? Right now, Ireland, Portugal, Spain, I mean, there is no real controlling point or controlling entity of the world economy. And actually, what I think is this G20 was also sort of a face saver. Actually, if you look at it, the old G7 is gone. Or most of it is gone. France and Italy, right? They only have a voice because they are part of Europe. And if you look these days, you don't hear about anybody but Germany, right? What Germany says goes, right? England. I've written an article, I said, very nice line, I thought. Still pompous after all these years. I mean, you got to give them credit, but actually, them to nahi. The other G7 member was Canada. No? Now, Canada actually did very well. Their banks did very well. But who listens to Canada? Right? And then Japan. Now, Japan is today, I think, the third largest economy in absolute terms and fourth largest in PPP terms. But they have spent the last 20 years just looking at them, as higher. I mean, nobody listens to anything Japan says because they don't say anything. Right? So, I think today the countries that matter, and I think there is sort of a new G7, right? It has not been announced as such. But who are the countries that matter? There is China, there is America, there is Germany, there is Russia, there is Brazil. Brazil is starting to do interesting things. There is Turkey, which is also going its own way, and being a Muslim country is very important. And there is India. Right? To me, this is the new G7. And I put them in that order because I think that is, as of today, 2 months ago, Fortune magazine, which all these magazines come, the 100 best, they came up with the most powerful people in the world. Well, number one was not Mr. Obama. Number one was Mr. who is the chairman of the Chinese Communist Party. So Fortune magazine is acknowledging that China is more important than America. See, Mr. Hu has another very important claim to fame. He has the same birthday as me. But see, one of the things, if I'm correct, and I believe I am, and we are seeing a new world, or let's say a new world order. See, in what ways is it going to be different, right? See, the earlier world order was, I think, in my view, it really started, well, a long time ago. And it was really about, the free market, right? And it seemed to win a battle with communism, right? And when the Berlin Wall came down, after, I think that was 89, and after which the, Soviet Union, and my personal belief is that is when it started turning around. I think, America started losing influence from then. It was still very powerful. But if you remember at that time, people talked about, after the Cold War, there is now a unipolar world.